Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
All right, welcome to Kentucky's Voice, the only program in Kentucky and in the city of Louisville that deals with news and politics from a conservative perspective. So thanks for joining us today, and it's a pretty eventful day. We have a lot going on in the world and in the region, and today we have two great guests. Of course, Bob Scott, one of our regular hosts here, is going to co-host with me today. So we also have T.J. Roberts, State Representative T.J. Roberts from Northern Kentucky, and we are going to discuss a couple of things. First of all, we have to touch on the school shooting up in Minnesota today, so we're going to start with that conversation. But we want to get to later in the show. We're going to discuss redistricting in Kentucky, because right now there is still one Democrat seat in Kentucky, and TJ has an idea, and that's been floated around, that we could maybe redistrict to where it is all GOP all across the state. So we're going to get that to the end of the show, So, but let's first talk about this school shooting, guys. Bob, another tragedy, and it's another. Let me just frame it this way: this is another transgender attack on Christian students, Christian children. And so
absolutely,
you can't frame it any other way. This is a pattern now. And,
yes.
And I laid this at the feet of the LGBT movement. I don't blame guns. I don't blame even the governor there. Of course he has some culpability. At the end of the day, that LGBT movement is basically lifting up this trans movement and has confused a ton of people, about that, that they can change their gender, and that just leads to all this mental health issues, spiritual issues, and then at the same time they're told they're victims, and the people and the oppressor are evangelical Christians, or Catholic Christians, and so those are the oppressors. So they have this victim oppressor narrative going on in their head with all this instability that this transgenderism causes. And you're going to get this stuff happening, and in that movement, the LGBT movement is feeding this, and so that's my. But Bob.
Listen, it's gender dysmorphia is a recognized psychiatric disorder. Period. It
is,
and the problem is, as you said, Tom. It's being coddled and held up as being something normal, and it's anything but normal, And
that's right.
And going from a Christian perspective, we know that God created us male and female. It's as plain as day as it gets, And again, sadly, the shooting occurred at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis. It resulted in the deaths of 2 children, 8 and 10. And injuries to 17 others, including 14 children and 3 adults, during a mass, a short-term mass that they were having. And the shooter has been identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, his real name originally, until he had it changed as a child to Robin. It was Robert. And he fired dozens of rounds through the church's stained glass windows using a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. And he was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after he did his damage, in there. And, the thing I will point out, I did appreciate the mayor, or not the mayor. I don't appreciate the mayor at all, but the police chief in a very, very liberal town referring to Westman as him.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
did, didn't he? Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if he'll be fired after that, but
Yeah.
that was
That was a risky move on his part,
encouraging
honestly.
to see that truth was being spoken.
That's
you
right.
know, so lots to pray about, folks.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to beat on transgenders today, and I know Tom isn't, and certainly TJ isn't. It is a problem. And again, by the extreme left, coddling them and petting them on the head and saying this is an okay thing,
Well,
they're
and
doing more
encouraging it.
damage
Yeah.
than good, you know, in the
well,
process.
But let me interrupt and say that when you use the word them, it almost makes it sound like that there's just a class of people that are by definition this way, and it is not. These are just people who have become
Yes.
confused.
That's right.
By this ideology, and I'm going to bring in TJ on this right now. So TJ, what we see a lot is the LGBT movement. They tend to want to frame their sexual identity in tantamount to their humanity. It's like they define their humanity by the way they are attracted to people, or the way they want to have sex, or the way they want to identify. That's who that defines them. Just like you're a man, or I have a friend that's African American, just like he's African American. No, those are immutable characteristics. All this LGBT stuff is fluid, very fluid, and this movement is encouraging more people to go down that road and confuse themselves. And anyway, what are your thoughts on this whole problem up there?
Thank you for having me on, Tom, and thank you for joining us, Bob. But evil struck America yesterday, and that evil manifested itself in the form of a so-called transgender freak entering a house of worship and murdering 2 children and injuring 17 others. It's a crisis, and frankly, it comes down to the reality that we are in a fight of good versus evil in America right here, right now. And there's people trying to shift blame on it, but let's be very clear. The blame is on this wicked individual that took innocent life and the ideology that inspired him. And I will never, by the way, publicly say the name of these cowards because it's what they want. But to be clear, that individual, his philosophy was that of the woke far left that believes that it is okay to use violence if you accept reality. And it really comes down to nihilism. It's an assault on Western civilization and making clear to those who worship God, and those who acknowledge truth, that they're not safe in their own homes. And it's time for Americans to accept that. It's time for Americans to learn to defend themselves, to defend their families, to defend their communities, to defend their faiths, and to defend our values. The reality is we have the mayor of Minneapolis on record mocking these children because they were in a house of prayer at the time.
That's right.
It's sick, and we need to realize this right now, that we are past the point of conversation on this. We need to put our foot down and say we are going to acknowledge reality. We are going to keep the Bill of Rights, and we're going to keep fighting for truth and justice in the United States. And we're never going to stop, and we're never going to compromise on this, because too many children have died as a result of the absolute lunacy of the left.
Yeah. And you know, TJ, I think I heard yesterday that the Catholic school system in that state made a written request to Governor Tim Walz, the former, vice presidential running mate to Kamala Harris, 2 years ago, to increase security at their schools because of the Nashville transgender attack. They said, hey, this could happen here. Tim Walz, will you help us with security at our school? And it was rejected.
And, that doesn't surprise me. And by the way, this happened here in Kentucky, too. Here in Kentucky, we've passed legislation that would have allowed for SROs to be in private and parochial schools. And we passed that bill. The Democrats overwhelmingly voted against it. And Andy Beshear line item vetoed that bill, leaving children as sitting ducks. And all I can say is thank God it hasn't happened here in Kentucky. And I pray to God it doesn't happen here in Kentucky. But if it does, we know whose blood Like, we know whose hands that blood is on.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we are keeping our schools safe. We need to be protecting them. And let's be completely level here. That shooter's manifesto indicated that he was targeting schools because they are gun-free zones.
Yes, that's right.
There in no uncertain terms.
He made that point directly. He basically said mass shooters like us, we are going to target places that are gun-free zones because they're easier to do our crime. He actually said that in paraphrasing what he said, but it's exactly what he said. Bob, to TJ's point, we have to defend our children.
That's right, Tom.
The only way you stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, and so
that's correct.
It's not pretty words.
And that would have made. I'm not going to say all the difference, but it certainly would have had. That and an SRO there, those are two things. Again, as TJ very pointed out, there was no really line of defense there whatsoever. And it's amazing he didn't kill more kids, in the process. And this guy was also anti-Semitic. He talked about Jew gas, that he made on a smoke bomb. He threatened to kill President Trump, in phrases for the children on ammunition. Just a seriously wicked person, not in their right mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and if I can jump in on this, I just want to point that out. You're right. The only thing that stops bad guys with guns are good guys with guns. Look, Minnesota has a ban on private sales of guns without background checks. They have a red flag law that rhinos like Trey Gowdy are trying to call for now, blaming white people for this. They have a safe storage law. They totally ban guns on K through 12 beyond the Gun-Free School Zones Act. They require mental health services to report people's mental health to the federal government. None of that stopped this. And I will never stand for any gun control. Every town attacked me for it, but we're going to keep standing up.
Exactly right. Yeah, gun control states is where this stuff happens. And so we'll be right back.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
welcome back to the show. We're talking about the school shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota yesterday, the terrible tragedy of the LGBT assailant killing at least 2 children, injuring up to 17. Just a wicked thing, and we need to call it out for what it is. This is becoming an epidemic of transgender violence against particularly folks associated with Christian values, conservative, traditional American values, and it is a problem. And it's a problem that we need to wake up to, and we need to address, and we need to point fingers at the parties that are encouraging the problem. That is the LGBT movement. That's the woke left. They're the ones encouraging transgenderism. They're the ones that are ignoring the fact that it is really a mental health issue. It is a deeply spiritual issue. These people are troubled. At the end of the day, they're very troubled people, and we're encouraging more people to get into this troubled lifestyle and mindset. And then at the same time, they feed them this narrative that they're really victims, and there's an oppression out there, and Donald Trump's going to come create violence against you. And so they act out, and they become heroes, and like Luigi, who shot the CEO. They become the Luigi of the transgender movement. And so we have Bob Scott and T.J. Roberts with us today, and guys, this is really it's an epidemic, and I wasn't able to pull some of this up, but I've got pictures of people that are LGBT movement folks, transgender folks that are they have these T-shirts on with guns and knives and saying, defend transgenderism, and then there's gun clubs where they go out and shoot and learn how to. And they're basically this militia mindset that's developing amongst this movement, and it is very violent, and it's not just a isolated thing. This is really encouraged within that world now, and so. TJ, what are your have you seen some of this? I'm sure you have in some of these pictures of basically a transgender gun club, and they're wearing these pink vest with pink AR-15s, and so it's not a this isn't just an isolated moment. This is beyond just this movement. Or this moment.
No, and it's certainly not an isolated incident, and it's a culture of violence, and it's an assassination culture that's happening, whether it's Luigi Mangione, and this goes beyond the LGBT movement. This is the modern left. I can think about back in 2016, I was spit on for wearing a Rand Paul for U.S. Senate shirt. Now, that's nowhere near as severe as things have gotten, but there were Antifa street brawls, there's assassination attempts on the president of the United States, there's death threats that I regularly receive, whether that be as an elected official or in my law practice. I hardly ever go to law enforcement. I carry all the time, so I'm not too worried about it. But the fact is that you look at particularly in the transgender area. There's a photo of the lieutenant governor of Minnesota. Yeah. Where it says protect trans kids, where it has a knife on it on the shirt. So it's absolutely being encouraged. And it's being encouraged at the highest level of it. And I understand it. I condemn it, but I understand where it comes from, because these people think that beyond their sexuality, there is no other sense of identity. And that's the difference with the right. We have so much more than political power and institutional power. We have our faith. We have our families. Right. We have the family farm. We have our careers. We have so much more going for us than a fundamentally nihilist philosophy that believes that there is no meaning, and therefore they just tether their meaning to what their mind tells them their biology should be. That's right. And my heart breaks for people who fall for this philosophy. That's right. But at a certain point, compassion has to go to the wayside, and we have to do what is necessary to protect the general public. And the reality is, there is a threat to the public so long as these philosophies continue to spread.
That's well said. And yeah, Bob, what can we do? I mean, we have this radical ideology, this radical radicalized people that are arming themselves, that are wanting to do this sort of violence. And what should we do as conservatives, as Christians, as Americans?
As a conservative Christian, I'll just say very quickly, we need to pray and call out to God, and then secondly, and very importantly, speak the truth in love. Don't back down from situations. It's a shame that that's happened to TJ. I've had similar things that's happened to me in the past for showing my conservatism, my Christianity. These are things that we have to, at the end of the day, remember to always operate in truth and love, with regard to situations like this. And the good news is we know the current administration in Washington is actively pursuing this. Kash Patel and the FBI is investigating the attack as a domestic terrorism and hate crime targeting Catholics in this situation. So I do have no doubt that we're going to see some more in-depth looks coming at this. And we know the Minneapolis police chief, Brian O'Hara, he called it let me get the exact quote, deliberate and deplorable act of violence and absolutely incomprehensible. So, the nation, I believe, is waking up, and by God's grace, we're going to, again, continue to speak truth and getting people out of this mindset. And by the way, if you want to join in today's program and have a comment that you'd like to make for Representative Roberts, you can do so by texting us at 502-571-0970. Again, 502-571-0970. We would absolutely love to have your comments today.
Yeah, you sure would. And to your point, Bob, and also Representative Roberts' point, the nihilism of this movement and of these ideas. I think it even goes a little bit deeper than that. I'm not, I'm wearing a hat today, "Make America Pray Again," instead of "Make America Great Again." And I wear this because I think we're dealing with more than just ideological differences. We're dealing with a real spiritual war that's going on, and I'm not afraid to say that. It may sound kind of spooky spiritual to people that are a little more secular, don't kind of see the world that way. But if you read the manifesto of this kid, and if you don't walk away with some sort of just feeling of unease, of ick, and it's very demonic when you read some of this stuff. I mean, the pictures of Christ, using Christ as a target, just the vitriol that this kid is portraying, and it is. I'm sorry, there is a demonic component to this, and there is a spiritual world, whether you like it or not. There is, and whether you can disbelieve it, but it's just true. And history has shown that. I mean, all the great thinkers throughout history realized this. Even pre-Christian thinkers understood this. The Greeks understood this. There's every culture understood there's a good and evil spiritual forces acting on people, and so we're dealing with this on that level, and this hyper secular focus we've had in our culture for the past 50 to 100 years. This is the result of that. We're kind of blinding ourselves to this reality of what evil is, and because you can't explain this any other way. Why is this person saying this? Why is he targeting this particular group? Why is he targeting a mosque? Why is he targeting Buddhist? It happens to be the Christian God that he's really upset with. And
he went to school at the place that he shot up, and his mom was on staff in the business office there, for many years. So and again, that's a bit puzzling too. Why is he targeting the place that basically fed and nurtured him? Yeah. Certainly spiritually, Tom, you're right. Yeah. It's a mental health crisis that I think the left has created, pure and simple.
Mental health that's also correlates with a spiritual health issue. And I'll just say it for what it is. I think the more we pull away from our Judeo-Christian roots, the more this stuff is what it is. And so we only have less than a minute left. Let me say this to TJ. TJ, a lot of states have talked about funding school resource officers and funding. I'd like to, we've got 30 seconds left. I'll say this for the next segment. I want to get your thoughts on, is there anything we can do in Kentucky to help protect Christian schools and even public schools? And also, we're going to talk about redistricting in the state after this next segment. We'll be right back. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice with TJ Roberts and Bob Scott.
online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We were talking about the school shooting up in Minnesota in the last two segments, and I wanted to just spend a few more moments discussing what we can do here in this state to prevent this sort of thing. If we mentioned earlier, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And if you look at, if you go to Walmart, you go to the local shopping mall, they have security there. You go to a bank, they have security there. Why aren't we protecting our most precious resources that we have, which is our children, with especially when they're being targeted? They're being specifically targeted by a radical group in this country. And so what I asked TJ, I know there's been some legislation in the past, but what can be done currently to help all schools, but I think even particularly private schools that are Christian and religious in nature, they probably need some protection more so even than public schools. But what could be done at the state level to help fund this? Because a nonprofit Christian school, they don't have a lot of money to hire a full-time police officer. But so what could we do?
Well, I think that when it comes to protecting our children, it's got to be a community effort now. We had House Bill 622, which was a great bill that authorized up to $20,000 for private schools to hire law enforcement officers. And Andy Beshear vetoed that provision. And he sent a message to families that he wants to punish you in any way if you choose to invoke your right to educate your child in a way that he does not see fit. And that was such a stunning message, especially now where Andy Beshear said to every violent psychopath in Kentucky that private schools are open season. And if anything happens at one of those, that blood is partially on Andy Beshear's hands. And I want to be very clear about that.
Yes.
Until we get back in the 2026 session, there's nothing I can do as a legislature, but there's something that counties can do as well. They can pick up that effort. Communities as well. People can volunteer and just be clear. People have a right to defend their children. So when we get back into session, that's going to be one point, making sure that we repass that bill outside of the veto period. We didn't think Andy Beshear was so disgusting to leave children as sitting ducks. Apparently he is. And I hope the voters remember that if he runs for any other office. But also, we need to understand the overwhelming bulk of these mass casualty incidents happen in gun-free zones. Yeah. I primary co-sponsored Representative Savannah Maddox's bill to do away with gun-free zones in Kentucky. That would have been a great bill to move. Yeah. I think we need to move that further because these shooters are cowards. We need to remember that. Yeah. And the risk that there is someone armed, ready to give an immediate response to their psychotic actions against our children is the number one deterrent we have in order to keep our children safe. Well, so those are a couple of things that I think we need to fight for. And we need to get back to this culture as well of worshiping God, not worshiping government, worshiping God, not worshiping the self, and fundamentally getting back to this morality position that life matters, that human life matters.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, as more we pulled away from our Christian heritage, the more we need all these, mental health, solutions that are really not solutions. They're just Band-Aids because so much of the stuff is in the hearts and the human heart, and it's only can be dealt with from the creator of the human heart. But Bob, real quick to TJ's point, maybe we need to start some sort of volunteer effort. Maybe we can encourage that on this program. If you're an ex-police officer or a veteran or somebody that's concerned about this issue, maybe we can put you in touch with some private schools here that might want some help.
I think that would be fabulous, Tom. But I do know my kids went to Christian schools, and at least the schools that they went to, they had a basically very strong security plan set up with, quite frankly, guns backing it up.
Yeah, good. So the teachers had firearms, in other words.
Not all the teachers, but several designated teachers did, and they were also properly trained.
Yeah. Now, TJ, in public schools, are teachers allowed to have firearms in a public school? I sure a private school, I'm sure would, but
So Kentucky doesn't have any laws regulating it, so it comes down to the school board level.
Okay.
And my view of it is this: if I wouldn't trust a teacher with a gun, I would not trust them with my child.
Hmm.
I do trust teachers to defend children, and I do believe that they should have the ability to step in to defend themselves and to defend the children of their classroom.
Yeah.
And I think that school boards should seriously consider that issue.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's exceptions to every rule, but that being said, as a general matter, if you are allowed to be in the presence of hundreds, if not thousands of children, 5 days a week, 9 months a year, why on earth should we not trust them
That's
with the
right.
ability to take those children's safety into their hands? So I trust the teachers with that opportunity, and I think that we should seriously have a conversation about this.
Yeah. I think America is becoming disgusted at this point at the vulnerability of schools, and we need to do something, and we need to protect. Like I said, this is our most precious resource, our children, and we're not protecting them against not only just LGBT attackers. And you've got radical Muslims out there, you've got just atheists, Satan, whatever. There's all these reasons that somebody with evil intent can dream up to attack our children because they're. And so we need to protect our children, and this has to be done. So I encourage you, call your legislature, call the governor's office, call and volunteer if you can. Maybe call and give some money to a local school. If they say, here, I want to give you some money just specifically to support a school resource officer, and promise me you'll spend it on that. And just, this show's about grassroots efforts, grassroots solutions, and it's in your hands now. Okay, we're going to switch topics to something we originally were going to do the whole show on, but also hope we have enough time to cover. But I'm sure you've heard that Texas is redistricting all of its U.S. congressional districts in order to create more GOP-friendly districts, and it's called, the technical term is called gerrymandering, and it's an old term from this congressman. I think his name was Jerry or whatever, but the term became like gerrymandering because the district looked like a salamander at the end of the day. It was so oddly drawn, but it was there to protect his district. Well, Democrats have been doing this expertly for years and to their advantage. And Republicans have never really jumped on this bandwagon until recently, and for good reason. So TJ, you've got an idea to just redistrict Kentucky to maybe add one more GOP seat in Kentucky. Right now we have 6 seats, 5 are Republican, 1 is a Democrat, and that district is in Louisville. And so, what could we do to do that? And then, well, first of all, why would we want to do this? Before we get into what we can do in Kentucky, why is this a good idea nationwide?
Well, Tom, there's so many reasons why redistricting is needed, but fundamentally, it's to protect American sovereignty. Andy Beshear just endorsed Gavin Newsom's idea of redistricting California in order to add more Democrat seats. But think about how California got as many congressional seats as it did in the first place.
That's right.
It's through state-sanctioned mass migration, both legal and illegal, and weaponizing the census to bring in representation of people who are not American citizens. We just saw the other week, there's 55 million temporary visa holders in America. We have seen for years that there are tens of millions of illegal immigrants. And the way that we're currently counting congressional seats is 1 member of Congress for every 750,000 people, not distinguishing between citizens, not distinguishing between legal immigrants, not distinguishing between illegal immigrants even. And as a result of this, California has more congressional seats for illegal immigrants than Kentucky has congressional seats in general. Illegal immigration has completely and totally disenfranchised Kentucky in terms of federal representation in the House of Representatives. So this is just one thing that we can do to ensure that Kentucky's voice is truly represented in Congress. And part of that is just understanding The third district is gerrymandered to intentionally create a blue district already.
That's right.
There are maps that are more geographically sensible for all 6 districts, and ultimately, it would create a congressional delegation that more closely represents the views of the average Kentuckian, the average citizen, the average voter. And by the way, this is just what states can do to defend themselves right now. I think the federal government needs to redo the census, use the broad power that the Supreme Court has recognized that both Congress and the president has to engage in rulemaking and legislation. To be clear, that for congressional appropriations, it should only count U.S. citizens. People
Yes.
love to talk about the prior Supreme Court decision. That did not say it was unconstitutional. The reason why the citizenship question was struck down was because they didn't go through the Administrative Procedure Act properly. That was it. They got to the merits on the constitutionality and they held it was constitutional for there to be a citizenship question on the census. We need to do that because right now America's sovereignty is at stake. And I will be clear, so long as I have any say about it, America's institutions will represent Americans. And I will never let America fall to foreign influences that have seeped their way into the United States through mass migration. It
Yeah.
will end.
Yeah, let that sink in. If you're listening and watching at home, let that sink in. So basically, there are illegal immigrants that are residing in states like California that are filling up the quota that they need to create a district, and so that means that illegal immigrant is canceling out your vote. Let that sink in. An illegal immigrant in California is canceling out your vote as an American citizen. They're diluting your political power. That is un-American as it gets. And so when it comes to fighting back against this, if this is one tool we need to use, let's use it. Let's redistrict Kentucky to get us at least one more seat in the U.S. because we're being cheated right now. And so we'll be right back.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush. We have a special guest, TJ Roberts, on the show. TJ is championing a cause that is dear to my heart, and that is to redistrict Kentucky, redistrict the U.S. congressional districts to add another seat for the GOP, for Republicans. And lots of reasons to do that. The last segment we talked about, one of the key reasons that really motivates me is the fact that illegal immigrants in states like California and New York or Chicago, wherever, they're being counted in the census, and the census rules on districting basically says that people that live within this district, count towards this congressional, quota that they need to make a district. Well, that means an illegal immigrant basically is counted that way. So a non-citizen is counted as a resident in that district, and so they build a district around that population. So in other words, they are stealing your vote. They're diluting your political power by doing that. And this has been going on for years. And there's probably, I don't know, TJ, I've heard there's probably like 10 districts that would probably swing to the GOP if we didn't just do that practice alone. And and then on top of that issue, there's another reason to do it. We undercount a lot of Republican areas, rural areas in the census. And also just the way the Democrats have been gerrymandering their districts for decades, and we don't, and we've just been kind of ceding the ground to them. Just letting go to Illinois and look at their districts. They have so many more Democrat districts than they should, based on the population of Republicans and Democrats. And so we need to do this just to have a fair representation and. On the playing field. So what are some other reasons like that TJ, that we need to do this?
Tom, when the left takes power, they use it, and they use it accordingly. That's why Illinois has so many blue districts. That's why Maryland has so many blue districts. That's why New York has so many blue districts. Let's be clear. If it weren't for the political power shops of Chicago, New York City, or Annapolis, Maryland, those states would not have blue districts at all. But they don't just try to make sure that those blue districts represent those areas. They make sure that those blue districts bleed down into clearly conservative areas that would vomit at the idea of living under the rules that the people of Chicago and New York City have to live under.
Yeah.
And they force these people to be under this representation. And every time the right takes power, we just say, well, it might set a bad precedent if we do it. Well, here's a news flash. The left is already doing it.
Yeah.
If they have an opportunity to subjugate you, they will. We have to understand that rule moving forward, because for far too long, we have given them mercy where they would not give us mercy.
That's right.
And that said, I think the best way to do it is redo our census, make sure that the congressional maps truly represent Americans. But for the time being, we have to take it to the state level. And that's why I commend what Texas is doing with their redistricting. That's why I think Kentucky needs to join that as well, because we have this glowing blue dot that truly does not represent Kentucky. Let's be very clear. Morgan McGarvey does not represent Kentuckians.
Right.
And that district was gerrymandered specifically to keep a Democrat in office. And we have an 80-20 Republican supermajority in the House. We have a 31-7 Republican supermajority in the Senate. And I'm sorry, but the interests of Kentucky as a whole should matter more than the desire of one city that couldn't even protect its own people during the 2020 riots.
Exactly.
So as far as I'm concerned, we should get serious with this reality that Kentucky is a conservative commonwealth. And yeah, Andy Beshear can go and beat his drum about his support of Gavin Newsom, but that's the point. If the Beshears and the Newsoms of the world are going to play hardball, so should we.
That's right. Well, and they have been for years. To your point, they've taken no prisoners for years, and we come onto the field playing the Marcus of Queensberry rules, where we're going to play fair, and we're just going to do this is the way it ought to be, and you're just a gentleman like we are. No, they haven't been. They're underhanded, and they've been taking advantage of this for years. So we're going to pull up this map that has been proposed of Kentucky. And this would be the districts after the redistricting that would allow for 6 strongly GOP favored districts, right? So in other words, there's enough of a population that traditionally votes GOP in these districts to pretty much guarantee a Republican winner in a general election. So if you notice the way Jefferson County is basically split up into at least two different districts here. That's the solution. And as TJ was saying earlier, before Jefferson County was its own district, and so and since it's heavily Democrat, then it would generally win a Democrat seat. But this solution would allow that to change and allow the state to be more fairly represented for what it is. And so I think this is beautiful. This is a wonderful thing. It's very much needed. It's fair. And TJ, what can we do to make this happen? What is necessary for this to happen?
Right. And I'm going to just preface this. This map is nothing new. This was thrown around in the 2022 session. But what you guys can do to make this happen is just make your voice heard. Be clear that we need new congressional maps in light of the absolute onslaught we're seeing from the left, and that we need to start playing hardball as well.
Yeah.
So that's really what needs to happen. And it doesn't have to be that map. It can be anything that just truly and fairly represents the people of Kentucky, because that's not what we currently have with the way that our 3rd district is. And by the way, this wasn't even a conversation at first until Andy Beshear started beating the drum, talking about how Gavin Newsom's expansion of blue maps is somehow the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
So just be clear of that. You have to be clear to your elected leaders. The left isn't going to have mercy on us.
That's right.
They're going to continue to play hardball. They've been playing hardball every time they get into power. We hold the power, and that the conservative base demands free and fair elections and free and fair electoral maps.
Exactly right. And for our votes to be fairly and our political power to be fairly represented, because it's not currently, because of the illegal issue in all these states. And so hopefully that issue can be resolved just by not counting illegals towards districts. That could be solved in that way. But this is a step towards readdressing that as well. And so, Bob, I think Bob Scott's still on the line. Bob, what are your thoughts on this?
No, I at first, my initial take is, gosh, I don't know if that's something that we want to do. But, and the big but is, as Representative Roberts has pointed out, I do think we're at a point now because other states are doing this. There's too much at stake right now. And they're doing it. They've been doing it for a long time. And I'm talking about liberal Democrats. This is nothing new. It's been said. It's about time. And boy, would I love to see, total red state across the board. And TJ is right. Morgan McGarvey is anything but fair and unbiased. He really is. And he is completely out of track with the norms of the state as a whole.
Yeah, well said. So, yeah, this really needs to happen. And yeah, at first, because Republicans have an instinct of want to play fair. We believe in the system. We believe in democracy. But when you look at the system the way it is now, the way it is unfair. It is unfair to us, and so it is. So we have a duty to respond and do this just to protect our own values and interest. And so I think this is necessary. I don't think this is just as a tactic that we can do. Wouldn't it be great if we could do this? I think it's a necessary move at this point, because until we resolve these issues of undercounting Republican districts, which they do, and until we resolve the issues of Democrat states gerrymandering to the hilt, and way beyond their percentages of Republicans versus Democrats in the state. You know, they have heavily weighted Democrat districts. Till that's resolved, and until with the illegal problem is solved and counting illegals, we have to do this. And so so call your congressional, your state representative, your state senator. Call Andy Bashir. I don't know if it's going to help or not, but call Andy Bashir. But we need to do something and support TJ's effort on this. So TJ, are you going to maybe reintroduce this, maybe, or what's in the next session in 2026, or what would your involvement in this be, if at all?
Yeah, Tom. So I am on the Elections, Constitutional Amendments, and Intergovernmental Affairs Committee. So I'm going to be talking with leadership. I'm going to be talking with our committee chairs to see what the attitude of it is. I don't know if I'm going to be the best person to sponsor, but that being said, I'm going to be pushing for this.
Okay.
I'm seriously contemplating the methods that we can do to make sure that Kentucky's elections are secure and truly represent that of the normal Kentuckian. So I'm not saying I'm going to be the one to sponsor it, but
Sure.
there's a likelihood that I will.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm here to listen to you guys. I want to get the priorities of the people and make sure that the will of the Commonwealth is represented in our state government.
Yeah, well, and certainly you would vote for it once it's presented, and I think we'll make some calls to some of our friends in the legislature as well to encourage them to sponsor it and get behind it as well. So, so when could this happen? I mean, because I know Texas is doing this with a hope of a mid-decade redistricting, I believe. So first of all, we wouldn't be able to vote on this until the 2026 term. So we're looking at next year to even vote. So when could this district redistricting actually occur theoretically, if this could happen?
I mean, it could happen next year.
Okay.
In 2022, we did our redistricting. That took effect in our 2022 elections. So yeah, it can absolutely happen. And by the way, there were hiccups with the 2022 election. There were people who were drawn out of their districts, and yet we still proceeded with it. We still made it happen. So there's nothing in Kentucky's Constitution or in federal law that stops us from doing this. So I say that we should go full steam ahead.
So by the 2028 election, this could be a reality. Pull up that map again one more time, Mr. Producer. I want people to see this. So basically, this is one version of the proposed redistricting. As you can see, Jefferson County used to have a Democrat district. Basically, it followed its borders of the county. This would be carving that up slightly to where you have two different districts overlapping into that. That would create a Republican-friendly district. And there you go. That's the solution. So folks, if you're watching, let's make this happen. Let's really make this happen, because we need to fight back against what's happening in our country. California's still here, but we'll be back tomorrow on Kentucky Voice. Thanks for watching. All right, great job, TJ. Really good.